Surgeon risks career to save girl who resembles his deceased sister. Michael, a young surgeon, was walking home after a long and exhausting shift at the hospital. The night was cold and quiet when he heard crying from a dark street. As he approached, he saw a girl, Sarah, sitting on the sidewalk with tears in her eyes, holding her injured knee. The scene transported him back in time, bringing up memories of his sister, who had passed away years ago. There was a disturbing resemblance between the two. Michael knelt down, trying to calm the girl with his gentle voice. "It's okay. I'm going to help you," he said as he examined the injury. Still frightened, Sarah looked at Michael with eyes full of pain and trust. He quickly assessed the severity of the situation. Her knee was swollen and appeared to be severely injured. Without hesitation, Michael decided she needed to be taken to the hospital immediately. "Let's go. I'm a doctor, and I'll take care of you," he assured her, trying to calm her down. He gently lifted her and took her to his car. During the ride, he asked questions to distract her from the pain. "Do you remember what happened?" he asked, trying to understand how she had gotten hurt. Upon arriving at the hospital, Michael quickly took Sarah to the emergency room. He knew it was outside his shift hours, but the instinct to help was stronger. The on-duty team was surprised to see him, but Michael quickly explained the situation. "She needs urgent care. I'll be with her," he said, taking responsibility for the girl. The doctor took her to the examination room, where he began preparing everything for first aid. Sarah looked at him with a mix of fear and gratitude. As he tended to the injury, Michael felt a strange connection with Sarah. He thought of his sister and how he wished he could have done more for her. The pain of losing someone so young and so similar to Sarah motivated him even more to do everything he could to help. "I'll take care of you, I promise," he said in a firm but compassionate voice. During the treatment, Sarah murmured some words of gratitude, which warmed Michael's heart. "No need to thank me. I'm just doing my job," he responded, trying to hide the emotion he felt. While applying first aid, Michael thought about the possible complications that could arise. The knee injury seemed severe, and he feared the possibility of surgery. "Let's wait for the tests, but don't worry. I'll be here the whole time," he assured Sarah, trying to convey confidence. He knew the situation was delicate, but he was determined to do whatever it took to ensure her recovery. The thought of his sister continued to echo in his mind, like a shadow from the past he couldn't ignore. After stabilizing Sarah, Michael stayed by her side, waiting for the test results. He felt an immense responsibility, as if fate was giving him a second chance to save someone who reminded him so much of his sister. "Everything will be okay," he kept repeating to himself, trying to convince himself that he was doing the right thing. The girl fell asleep exhausted, and Michael took the moment to reflect on what had just happened. The resemblance between Sarah and his sister was undeniable, and it pushed him to continue helping. He committed himself to caring for her as if she were his own sister, determined to do everything he could. At the hospital, Michael anxiously awaited the results of Sarah's tests. When they finally arrived, his heart sank at the severity of the situation. Her knee was in critical condition, and if nothing was done quickly, she could lose the function of her leg. He knew that the only solution was immediate surgery. However, the chief surgeon, Dr. Carter, was unavailable, and Michael was aware of the hospital's strict protocols. Despite this, the urgency of the case left him with no options. He pondered for a few minutes, but the thought of his sister and the promise he had made to Sarah were enough to make his decision. "I need to act now," he thought with unwavering determination. Michael called the on-duty medical team, who hesitated upon realizing he intended to perform the surgery without authorization. "Are you sure about this?" asked one of the nurses, concerned about the possible consequences. Michael nodded firmly. "If we don't do this now, she may never walk again," he responded, resolute. The team, trusting in his skill and experience, prepared for the operation. The young surgeon quickly suited up and entered the operating room, where Sarah was sedated and ready for the procedure. He knew there was no room for error. During the surgery, Michael remained calm and focused. Every movement was precise, every decision critical. The room was silent, with only the sound of the heart monitors and Michael's firm commands. He guided the team with clarity and confidence, as if he had years of experience. "We'll need a strong suture here," he instructed, as he meticulously worked on Sarah's knee. Time seemed to slow down, each second filled with tension and hope. He knew that this surgery was not just a medical issue but also a defining moment in his career and life. After hours of intense work, Michael completed the surgery. The feeling of relief was immediate, but he knew the real test was yet to come: Sarah's recovery. He left the operating room, sweaty and exhausted, but with a sense of accomplishment. "It was a success," he announced to the team, who responded with smiles and discreet applause. However, Michael couldn't help but feel a slight apprehension. He knew he had broken important rules and that this could have serious consequences for his career. He just hoped he had made the right decision. In the post-operative period, Michael stayed by Sarah's side, closely monitoring her recovery. He spoke to her as she began to wake up, reassuring her. "The surgery was a success, Sarah. Now, just rest and recover," he said with an encouraging smile. Sarah, still drowsy and confused, thanked him with a slight nod. Michael felt a wave of emotion seeing her respond positively. He was determined to ensure she received the best care possible. The day after the surgery, the hospital was in turmoil. Dr. Carter, the renowned chief of surgery, returned and quickly became aware of the events of the previous night. Upon learning about the unauthorized surgery performed by Michael, he felt a mix of surprise and indignation. With a serious expression, he approached the young doctor. "Michael, I need to speak with you immediately in my office," he said, leaving no room for questions. Michael, already expecting a harsh reaction, followed with his head down but with his heart firm in his decision. In the office, the atmosphere was tense. Dr. Carter wasted no time and began speaking in a stern tone. "You know you broke the most basic rules of the hospital, don't you?" he began, looking directly into Michael's eyes. The young doctor nodded, but before he could respond, Carter continued. "I understand the situation was critical, but there are protocols to follow. Your actions could have resulted in serious medical and legal complications," he emphasized, gesturing with his hand. Michael took a deep breath, trying to explain his position. "I know, doctor, but I felt I had no choice. Her life was at risk," he justified, his voice laden with sincerity and concern. Though visibly irritated, Dr. Carter couldn't ignore Michael's courage and skill. He knew that the decision to operate without authorization required a lot of confidence and competence. However, he also needed to maintain order and discipline in the hospital. "Michael, I admire your dedication and desire to save lives. But you need to understand that without following protocols, you put not only yourself at risk but also the institution and the patients," he explained, softening his tone. Michael agreed, understanding the gravity of his actions but without regrets. After a brief silence, Dr. Carter made the difficult decision to fire Michael, despite his empathy for the situation. "Unfortunately, I can't let this go. You're dismissed, effective immediately," he announced with a regretful expression. Michael felt a chill down his spine but maintained his composure. "I understand, doctor. I just hope she'll be okay," he replied with a lump in his throat. He knew his career might be ruined, but his primary concern was still Sarah's recovery. Dr. Carter, seeing the regret in Michael's eyes, simply nodded, respecting the young doctor's professional stance. As Michael gathered his things and prepared to leave the hospital, some colleagues approached him. Some congratulated him on his courage, while others expressed concern about his career. "You did what you thought was right, Michael. Don't blame yourself," said a nurse, trying to comfort him. Michael thanked them for their words of support, but he was absorbed in his own thoughts. He knew the consequences of his decision were severe, but he couldn't regret it. To him, saving Sarah was the most important thing, even if it meant sacrificing his own career. After the restless night, Michael, still concerned about Sarah's recovery, decided that while he figured out the next steps, he would personally care for the girl. Not knowing where her family was, he took her to his own home, determined to ensure she received all the necessary care. Sarah, still weak, smiled gratefully as he prepared a simple breakfast for her. "Do you like it?" he asked, trying to cheer her up. The girl nodded shyly as she took a sip of juice. While Sarah rested, Michael sat at his laptop, determined to find information about the girl's family. He knew he couldn't care for her forever and that her parents must be desperate. As he browsed through social media, he came across a post that caught his attention. A desperate mother named Catherine was pleading for information about her missing daughter. Michael froze when he realized the girl in the photo was Sarah. "My God! It's her!" he exclaimed, feeling a mix of relief and urgency. He quickly picked up the phone and called the contact number in the post. Catherine answered the phone with a trembling voice, clearly distressed. "Hello? Who is this?" she asked, trying to maintain hope. Michael introduced himself and explained the situation. "I'm Dr. Michael. I found your daughter, Sarah. She's with me, safe and recovering," he said, trying to calm her. On the other end of the line, Catherine sighed with relief mixed with sobs. "Thank you, God, thank you," she exclaimed, her voice choked with emotion. Michael quickly explained what had happened and where they were. "I'll send you the location. Please come as soon as possible," he suggested, concerned about Sarah's health. As he waited for Catherine's arrival, Michael reflected on how unexpected the situation had become. In just a few days, he had gone from being a simple surgeon to an unexpected caregiver for an unknown girl. He knew he needed to prepare for meeting Sarah's mother and the possible questions and reactions that might arise. "I hope she understands what I did and why," he thought, still unsure about the repercussions of his actions. But one thing was certain. He had done everything with the best of intentions. When Catherine arrived at Michael's house, she was greeted by a visibly tired man who welcomed her with a gentle smile. "Nice to meet you. I'm Michael," he said, extending his hand. Catherine, her eyes red from crying, rushed to embrace her daughter, who was lying on the couch. "Sarah, my love, are you okay?" she asked as tears streamed down her face. Sarah, still a bit dazed, replied with a weak smile, "I'm fine, Mom. This is Dr. Michael. He took care of me." Catherine looked at Michael, deeply grateful but also worried about everything that had happened. As Catherine held her daughter's hand, Michael explained the details of the injury and the surgery he had performed. "It was a difficult decision, but I knew it was necessary," he said, trying to reassure her. Catherine listened attentively, absorbing every word. "I don't know how to thank you, Dr. Michael. You saved my daughter's life," she said, her voice choked with gratitude. Michael, with a modest smile, replied, "I did what any doctor would do. The important thing is that she's here, safe." However, Catherine noticed the hesitation in his voice and asked, "Is everything okay? You seem worried." Michael hesitated for a moment before explaining the complicated situation at the hospital. Catherine was surprised to learn that Michael had been fired for performing the surgery without authorization. She felt a mix of gratitude and indignation. "That's absurd. You did what was necessary to save my daughter," she said firmly. Michael tried to calm her, but Catherine was determined to help him. "I have to do something. It's not fair that you lose your job over this," she stated, determined to intervene. When she asked which hospital he worked at, Catherine was even more surprised. "It can't be. My brother, Robert Allen, is the director of the hospital. I'll talk to him about what happened," she revealed, catching Michael off guard. He never imagined that Sarah's mother had such a direct connection with the hospital's administration. Catherine promised to arrange a meeting to discuss Michael's situation and try to reverse the decision of his dismissal. Michael was apprehensive as he prepared for the meeting with the hospital director, Robert Allen. Catherine had kept her promise to arrange the meeting, but Michael knew the situation was delicate. He dressed formally and tried to stay calm despite his nerves. "I need to stay calm and explain everything clearly," he thought as he organized his papers and prepared to leave. Upon arriving at the hospital, he found Catherine waiting for him. She gave him an encouraging smile. "Everything will be fine," she said, holding his hand briefly before they entered Robert's office together. As they entered, Michael was greeted by Robert Allen, a man with a serious expression and imposing posture. "Dr. Michael, please have a seat," Robert said, indicating the chair in front of his desk. Catherine also took her place beside him, ready to support Michael. The atmosphere was tense, but Michael knew he needed to maintain his composure. Robert began the meeting directly, without any preamble. "I've heard about the events of last week. It seems we have a lot to discuss," he said, interlacing his fingers on the desk. Michael nodded and began recounting the events, explaining his decision to operate on Sarah without authorization. As Michael spoke, Robert listened attentively, without interruption. With every word, Michael felt the weight of the responsibility for his actions. He explained the severity of Sarah's condition and how he felt there was no other option but to operate immediately. "I understand that I broke protocols, but my priority was to save her life," he stated with conviction. Catherine watched her brother closely, waiting for his reaction. Robert remained silent for a few seconds, which felt like an eternity to Michael, before responding. "I know the situation was urgent, but the rules exist for a reason," he said, in a serious but not hostile tone. Robert continued, expressing his concern about the breach of protocols and the potential legal implications for the hospital. However, he also acknowledged the value of Michael's decision. "You showed courage and skill. Not many would have done what you did," he admitted, softening his expression. Catherine seized the moment to intervene. "Robert, Michael saved my daughter's life. Without him, I don't know what would have happened. We need to recognize that," she argued firmly. Robert sighed, nodding his head. "I understand, Catherine, but I also have to consider the impact on the hospital's rules and operations," he replied, weighing the situation. After a more detailed discussion, Robert made a decision. He looked at Michael with an evaluative gaze before speaking. "Given the exceptional circumstances and the positive outcome, I've decided to suspend your dismissal. However, you will be under observation for 6 months, he declared formally. Michael felt a wave of relief wash over him at those words. He knew he would still have to prove his competence and strictly follow the rules, but at least he had the chance to continue his career. "Thank you, Mr. Allen. I promise to adhere to all the guidelines from now on," he said, sincerely grateful. As the meeting concluded, Robert made a final comment. "Michael, you're a talented doctor. I hope this situation serves as a learning experience," he said, extending his hand for a firm handshake. Michael returned the gesture, feeling a mix of relief and gratitude. Catherine, beside him, smiled, satisfied with the outcome. As they left the office, she turned to Michael and said, "I knew my brother would understand. You deserve this second chance." Michael, still processing everything that had happened, just nodded with a shy smile. Outside, Michael and Catherine exchanged relieved smiles. "Thank you for everything, Catherine. I don't know what would have happened without your help," Michael said sincerely. Catherine shook her head and replied, "You did what was right, Michael. I'm just glad everything worked out." As they walked down the hospital corridor together, Michael felt a new hope ignite within him. He knew he still had much to prove, but he was determined to make the most of this second chance. With the issue at the hospital resolved, Michael began to focus on Sarah's recovery and his own professional reintegration. Catherine, on the other hand, started to visit the hospital more frequently to follow her daughter's progress. During this process, she and Michael spent more time together, discussing Sarah's care and sharing personal stories. Gradually, they began to notice a special connection. One sunny afternoon, while waiting for Sarah to finish a physical therapy session, Catherine turned to Michael and commented with a gentle smile, "I never thought we'd find comfort in each other in a situation like this." Michael smiled, understanding what Catherine meant. The moments they spent together had become a relief for both of them amidst the stress and uncertainty of recent days. "It's funny how life surprises us, isn't it?" Michael replied, reflecting on how unexpected their meeting had been. They continued talking, sharing life stories. Catherine spoke about her childhood, adventures, and challenges, while Michael shared memories of his sister and how she had influenced his choice of medicine. The conversation flowed naturally, as if they were old friends catching up. As time passed, their meetings became more frequent, and their friendship deepened. They started going out for lunch together after hospital visits and, on one such occasion, decided to take a walk in the park. The peaceful atmosphere and the sound of birds created a setting for a more intimate conversation. Catherine, looking at Michael, said, "It's nice to have someone to share these moments with, someone who understands what we're going through." Michael nodded, feeling the same way. He realized these meetings were more than just support. Something more was growing between them. The closeness between Catherine and Michael did not go unnoticed by their colleagues at the hospital. Some began to comment on a possible relationship between them, but they tried to keep things discreet. However, one day, while they were at the hospital cafe, a colleague approached and joked, "You two seem to be getting along very well. Is there something we should know?" Michael and Catherine laughed, trying to change the subject, but the embarrassment was palpable. "I think we're just good friends who've been through a lot together," Catherine said with a smile. Michael, in turn, simply nodded in agreement. Despite the comments, Michael and Catherine continued to see each other. They began meeting outside the hospital, exploring the city together, and these outings became an important part of their routines. On one such occasion, they went to an art exhibition, where they spent hours discussing the pieces and discovering common interests. As they left the exhibition, Michael turned to Catherine and, with a shy smile, said, "I really enjoy spending time with you. It's comforting." Catherine smiled back, feeling the same way. "I enjoy your company too, Michael. It makes everything feel less heavy," she replied sincerely. Their feelings for each other began to intensify, but both hesitated to take the next step. Concerns about Sarah and the recent turmoil in Michael's life made them think twice. However, the connection between them was undeniable. One night, as Michael was taking Catherine home, there was a moment of silence filled with tension. They stopped in front of Catherine's door, and for a moment, Michael's eyes met hers. He hesitated, but before he could say anything, Catherine stepped closer and hugged him. "Thank you for everything, Michael," she whispered. Michael, surprised, returned the embrace, feeling the warmth and closeness. From that moment on, things changed between them. Both knew they were at a crucial point where friendship was turning into something more significant. On a sunny afternoon, they decided to take a walk in the park, a peaceful place where they could talk without interruptions. They walked side by side, enjoying each other's company until they found a bench under a large tree's shade. They sat down, and Michael felt it was the right moment to express his feelings. He looked at Catherine, took a deep breath, and began to speak. "Catherine, I have something important to tell you," he started, a bit nervous. Catherine turned to him, sensing the seriousness in his voice. Michael hesitated for a moment but then continued, "Since we met, a lot has changed in my life, and you've been a fundamental part of that. I've started to feel something more than friendship for you." Catherine remained silent, absorbing his words. Noticing her hesitation, Michael quickly added, "I understand if you don't feel the same, but I needed to be honest about how I feel." Catherine was surprised by Michael's confession. She knew there was something special between them, but hearing his words made her realize the depth of her feelings. After a brief silence, she smiled and replied, "Michael, I feel something for you too. In fact, I've felt this way for a while, but I didn't know how to talk about it." The relief on Michael's face was evident. He smiled, feeling a mix of joy and nervousness. "So we're in the same boat?" he joked, trying to lighten the mood. Catherine laughed and nodded. "Yes, we are," she replied with a sparkle in her eyes. From that moment, the relationship between Catherine and Michael changed. They began to explore this new phase, allowing themselves to feel and express the affection they had suppressed for so long. However, they both knew they needed to handle the situation carefully, especially because of Sarah. "We need to be honest with Sarah about what's happening between us," Catherine said, concerned. Michael agreed. "Yes, she needs to know. I don't want her to feel confused," he responded. Aware of the impact their relationship could have on the girl, they decided to tell Sarah at an appropriate moment, choosing to go to the park where she often played. As Sarah ran and played, Catherine and Michael sat on a nearby bench, watching her affectionately. When Sarah returned, exhausted and smiling, they called her to sit with them. "Sarah, we want to talk to you about something important," Michael began, in a gentle voice. The girl looked at him, curious. Catherine continued, "Michael and I like each other a lot, and we've decided that we want to try being more than friends." Sarah looked at them for a moment, absorbing the information. To their surprise, Sarah smiled and said, "I already knew." Catherine and Michael exchanged surprised looks. "You knew?" Michael asked, confused. Sarah laughed, shaking her head. "Yes, you two are obvious," she replied with a mischievous expression. Catherine and Michael laughed, feeling the weight lift off their shoulders. "So, you're okay with it?" Catherine asked cautiously. Sarah nodded, smiling. "Yes, I'm happy for you. And besides, I really like Michael," she said with touching sincerity. Catherine and Michael looked at each other with relief and gratitude. After the conversation with Sarah, Michael and Catherine felt lighter and freer to explore their relationship. They began spending more time together as a family, creating precious memories. On a quiet night, while watching a movie at home, Michael held Catherine's hand and pulled her closer. "I never thought something so good could come out of such a complicated situation," he said with a smile. Catherine rested her head on his shoulder, feeling safe and happy. "Life is full of surprises," she replied, looking at Sarah, who was sleeping on the couch beside them. Catherine and Michael's relationship grew naturally and genuinely, without rush or pressure. They gave each other the time and space needed to get to know each other better and build a solid foundation. Michael, who had always been cautious with his emotions, finally allowed himself to feel and express his feelings. Catherine, in turn, found in Michael a loving and understanding partner. Together, they began to envision a future where they could be happy as a united and loving family. The relationship between Michael and Catherine continued to flourish, but a new challenge was about to arise and test the strength of their bond. Sarah began to show unusual symptoms: excessive fatigue, a constant low-grade fever, and slight paleness. Michael, always attentive, noticed these changes and decided to investigate further. "Catherine, I think we need to take Sarah for some tests," he suggested, trying to stay calm. Catherine, concerned, agreed. "Yes, I've noticed that she's different too," she replied, with a tone of apprehension. At the hospital, Michael personally oversaw all of Sarah's tests. He was determined to find out what was happening, but part of him feared the worst. After a series of tests, the results came in. As Michael reviewed the reports, he felt a chill down his spine. Sarah's symptoms were consistent with a rare disease, the same one that had taken his sister's life years before. "It can't be," he murmured to himself as his hands trembled slightly. He knew what this meant and how difficult it would be to face this reality again. Michael decided to share the news with Catherine as sensitively as possible. He called her for a private conversation in his office. "Catherine, Sarah's test results have come in," he began with a serious and concerned tone. Catherine, sensing the gravity of the situation, felt her heart race. "What's wrong, Michael?" she asked, anxious. He took a deep breath and continued. "Sarah's symptoms indicate that she might have a rare disease, the same one my sister had." Catherine was in shock, trying to process the information. "No, this can't be happening," she said with tears in her eyes. Determined not to repeat the past, Michael immediately began researching treatments and options for Sarah. He consulted specialists, reviewed studies, and dedicated himself to finding a solution. "I won't let this happen again," he promised himself as he worked tirelessly. Catherine, by his side, offered all the support she could. "We're in this together, Michael. We'll find a way to help our daughter," she said, holding his hand. Catherine's support was crucial for Michael, who felt the pressure of the responsibility to save Sarah. The hospital also mobilized to help Sarah. Dr. Carter, aware of the situation, offered all the necessary support. "Michael, we're all here for you and Sarah. We'll do everything we can to help her," he said sincerely. Michael appreciated the support but knew the battle would be tough. The following days were marked by additional tests and consultations with specialists. Despite her condition, Sarah showed incredible resilience. "I'm fine, Mom. Michael is taking care of me," she would say, trying to reassure Catherine. The girl's words were a mix of hope and innocence that strengthened everyone around her. As Sarah's treatment progressed, Michael and Catherine took turns staying by her side. Michael, who was already known for his dedication to his patients, now faced an even more challenging personal situation. He spent hours at the hospital both as a doctor and as a concerned father. Catherine, in turn, became a constant presence beside Sarah, offering love and support. "You're a warrior, Sarah," she would say, always encouraging her daughter. The hospital environment became a second home for them, where all efforts were directed towards Sarah's recovery. Despite the challenges, small moments of joy and hope emerged. Sarah, with her optimistic nature, continued to smile and play even amidst the treatment. One afternoon, while playing board games in the hospital room, Sarah looked at Michael and Catherine and said, "I know I'm going to be okay. We're a strong family." The girl's words deeply touched Michael, who felt a new wave of determination. "Yes, you're going to be okay, Sarah. We're going to get through this together," he replied with conviction. Catherine simply nodded, emotional, hugging her daughter. The fight against Sarah's illness was not easy, but it brought Michael, Catherine, and Sarah even closer. They faced each obstacle together, supporting each other and finding strength in the small victories of daily life. Michael, now more experienced and determined, used all his knowledge and resources to ensure the best possible treatment for Sarah. Catherine, in turn, continued to be the emotional rock of the family. And Sarah, with her strength and courage, became a source of inspiration for everyone. As Sarah's treatment progressed positively, Michael felt a renewed sense of purpose in both his personal and professional life. At the hospital, his hard work and dedication did not go unnoticed. Dr. Carter, now holding a newfound admiration for the young doctor, recognized his talent and commitment. On a quiet morning, he called Michael in for a meeting. "Michael, your work over the past few months has been exemplary. I'd like to discuss an opportunity for you to take on a leadership position here at the hospital," Dr. Carter said with an approving smile. Michael, surprised, felt a wave of emotion and gratitude. Michael accepted the new position with humility and determination, aware of the responsibility that came with the role. As a leader, he dedicated himself to implementing improvements in patient care and training new doctors. His personal experience with Sarah inspired him to create emotional support programs for patients and their families, recognizing the importance of holistic care. "I want everyone here to feel cared for, not just medically but also emotionally," he said in a meeting with the team. His ideas were well received, and he quickly gained the respect and admiration of everyone. At the same time, his personal life was also flourishing. His relationship with Catherine grew stronger each day, and they found comfort and joy in the small, everyday moments. Together, they created a harmonious routine, balancing the demands of work with quality family time. Sarah, recovering well, was a constant source of happiness. One evening, while dining together, Catherine looked at Michael and said, "I never thought we would find so much peace after everything we've been through." Michael, with a smile, replied, "We deserve this happiness, and we'll keep fighting for it." Michael's new role at the hospital brought additional challenges and responsibilities, but he was more than prepared to face them. He dedicated himself to mentoring new doctors, sharing his experience and wisdom acquired over the years. "Medicine is not just science, it's also compassion," he would say in his lectures, inspiring young professionals. His humanized and empathetic approach quickly became a model to follow. Dr. Carter, observing Michael's growth, couldn't help but feel proud. "You've truly become a pillar here, Michael," he remarked in a conversation. Despite his professional success, Michael never lost sight of what truly mattered: his family. He made sure to be present for important moments, whether accompanying Sarah to her appointments or enjoying quiet moments with Catherine. One weekend, they decided to take a short trip to a nearby town, an opportunity to disconnect from daily worries and enjoy time together. During a walk on the beach, Catherine held Michael's hand and said, "Thank you for being so strong. You are the foundation of this family." Michael, his eyes fixed on the horizon, simply smiled and squeezed her hand, feeling a deep inner peace. Michael's journey at the hospital also led him to get involved in research and projects that could benefit patients with rare diseases like Sarah's. He became an active voice in the medical community, advocating for better policies and treatments for these conditions. "We need to do more for these patients and not rest until we find solutions," he would state at conferences. His passion and dedication inspired many colleagues, and he soon became a respected figure in the field. Michael knew that, besides directly helping patients, he could influence significant changes in the healthcare system. With each achievement, Michael felt a profound gratitude for all he had accomplished. He reflected on his journey and the people who had been by his side: Catherine, his unwavering support, and Sarah, whose strength and resilience inspired him daily. On a quiet night while watching the stars, Catherine asked, "Did you ever imagine we'd come this far?" Michael shook his head thoughtfully. "I never imagined life would take this path, but I'm grateful for every step we've taken. Every challenge has made us stronger," he replied, feeling complete. With his personal and professional life in harmonious balance, Michael finally found a deep and lasting sense of fulfillment. He established himself not only as an excellent doctor but also as a leader and an example for his colleagues. More importantly, he found a home in his family, where love and understanding prevailed. As life returned to a calmer pace, Michael began to reflect on his journey and the experiences that had shaped him. On a serene evening, while looking through old photos with Catherine, he came across a picture of his mother. She was in her nurse's uniform, smiling warmly. Michael felt a wave of nostalgia and respect. "My mother was an incredible woman. She dedicated her life to caring for others," he commented with a melancholic smile. Catherine, beside him, encouraged him to talk more about her, curious to learn more about the woman who had influenced her partner so much. Michael shared stories from his childhood about how his mother was always a constant and loving presence. "She taught me that true strength lies in compassion and empathy," he said, recalling how she cared for patients with such dedication. He shared memories of accompanying her to the hospital as a child, watching in admiration how she treated everyone with respect and kindness. "That's when I decided I wanted to be a doctor, to help people just like she did," he confessed, his eyes shining with emotion. Catherine smiled, recognizing the legacy Michael's mother had left behind. These reflections on the past brought up the loss of his sister, an event that had profoundly marked his life. "Losing my sister was one of the hardest moments I've ever faced," he admitted, his voice laden with sadness. "At the time, I felt powerless, unable to do anything to save her. It motivated me even more to become a doctor, so I'd never feel that helpless again." Catherine, sensing the pain he still carried, held his hand and looked into his eyes. "You've done an incredible job, Michael. I'm sure your mother and sister would be very proud of you," she said tenderly. These moments of introspection also led him to reflect on how his mother had influenced not just his career choice but his approach to life. "She always taught me to look beyond the surface, to understand the stories behind each person," he recalled with a thoughtful smile. Michael realized that these lessons were fundamental to his medical practice, where he always sought to treat patients as complete human beings with stories and feelings, not just as clinical cases. "I think that's what makes me different as a doctor. I always try to see the person, not just the illness," he reflected. As Michael continued to explore his memories, he realized how much he had grown and learned over the years. "I was just a dreamer, wanting to make a difference," he said, chuckling softly. "Today, I feel like I found my path, my mission." Catherine listened attentively, admiring the clarity and depth of his thoughts. She knew how hard Michael had worked to get to where he was and how much he had sacrificed. "You are an extraordinary man, Michael, and most importantly, you've never lost your humanity," she affirmed with a loving look. These reflections also helped Michael to appreciate even more the family he was building with Catherine and Sarah. "Life has been a roller coaster, but I'm happy to have you both by my side," he said with a sincere smile. He knew that despite the challenges they had faced, they had built something beautiful and solid together. "Our family is my greatest achievement," he confessed, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. Catherine, emotional, simply nodded, sharing the same sentiment. They had created a home where love and understanding reigned, and it was something worth fighting for every day. Each day, Michael felt more at peace with his past and confident about the future. He knew that, although he couldn't change the painful events he had experienced, he could honor the memory of his mother and sister through his work and personal life. They will always be a part of me, he reflected, feeling a comforting calm. Alongside Catherine and Sarah, Michael found new meaning and purpose. As the months passed, Michael continued to excel in his new position at the hospital. His dedication and compassion earned him the respect of everyone, including Dr. Carter, who had initially been skeptical of his abilities. Despite the time that had passed, there was still unresolved tension between the two. Michael knew he needed to address it to truly move forward. One day, after a long shift, he decided to seek out Dr. Carter for an honest conversation. "Doctor, can we talk for a moment?" he asked respectfully. Dr. Carter nodded, gesturing for Michael to sit. The conversation began with an awkward silence, but Michael took the initiative. "I want to thank you for the opportunity you've given me and for everything I've learned here," he started, carefully choosing his words. "I know our views haven't always aligned, but I've always respected you as a professional." Dr. Carter listened attentively, sensing the sincerity in Michael's words. He also felt it was time to clear the air. "Michael, you're an excellent doctor. I've always known that, but the way you handled certain situations concerned me," he admitted with a thoughtful expression. Michael nodded, understanding Dr. Carter's concerns. "I understand, doctor. At the time, I was focused on saving lives and ended up overlooking some important rules. But I've learned a lot since then and am committed to following protocols," he responded humbly. Dr. Carter sighed, looking directly into Michael's eyes. "I've made mistakes in the past too, Michael, and sometimes, in trying to protect the hospital, I may have been too harsh," he confessed with a tone of regret. "But I never doubted your ability or intention." Michael was surprised by Dr. Carter's sincerity, feeling that they were finally reaching an understanding. This moment of honesty opened the door for a genuine reconciliation. Dr. Carter extended his hand to Michael, who shook it firmly. "Let's put the past behind us and focus on what we can build together moving forward," Dr. Carter suggested with a smile. Michael, relieved, nodded. "Agreed, doctor. Let's do our best for the hospital and the patients," he responded, feeling a weight lifted from his shoulders. With this conversation, both felt that a new phase of mutual respect and cooperation was beginning. In the days that followed, the relationship between Michael and Dr. Carter became more collaborative and cordial. Dr. Carter began to trust Michael's decisions more, recognizing his ability to lead and inspire the team. Michael, in turn, came to value Dr. Carter's advice and experience even more. Together, they began implementing new practices at the hospital, aiming to improve patient care and train new doctors. "We're doing good work here, Michael," Dr. Carter commented in a moment of reflection. Michael agreed, feeling proud of the progress they had made. This reconciliation not only improved the work environment but also brought a sense of acceptance and peace to Michael. He realized that to move forward, he needed to let go of past hurts and resentments. Forgiveness is a path to freedom, he thought, reflecting on his journey. He felt lighter, more focused on his purpose, and more connected with the people around him. The acceptance from Dr. Carter and the support from Catherine and Sarah strengthened his determination to continue growing, both personally and professionally. At a hospital event, Dr. Carter surprised Michael by calling him to the stage. "I'd like to acknowledge Dr. Michael's excellent work and his tireless dedication to the hospital and the patients," he announced with a proud smile. Michael, taken aback, felt moved by the public recognition. "This means a lot to me. Thank you all for the support," he said humbly as the audience warmly applauded. It was a moment of validation and reaffirmation that he was on the right path. Michael, Catherine, and Sarah's lives were in a harmonious rhythm. Sarah's recovery continued to progress positively, and the three began to plan for the future with renewed hope and joy. One day, while having lunch together at a cozy restaurant, Michael looked at Catherine and Sarah, feeling deep gratitude. "We have so much to be thankful for," he said with a serene smile. Catherine nodded, holding his hand across the table. "Yes, we do," she replied, looking affectionately at their daughter, who was busy with her favorite dish. With love blossoming between Michael and Catherine, they decided it was time to take the next step in their relationship. Michael, always romantic and thoughtful, planned a special moment to propose. On a sunny afternoon, they took Sarah for a walk in the park where it all began. As they walked, Michael started to tell a story about their journey together, recalling the difficult moments and victories they had shared. Stopping in front of the lake, he turned to Catherine, knelt down, and with a sparkle in his eyes, asked, "Catherine, will you marry me?" Catherine was surprised and moved. With tears in her eyes, she smiled and replied, "Yes, Michael, I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Michael placed the ring on her finger, and they embraced as Sarah clapped excitedly. "Mom's getting married," Sarah exclaimed, beaming with happiness. It was a moment of pure joy and love, marking the beginning of a new chapter for the family. They decided that the wedding would be an intimate celebration, surrounded by close friends and family, where they could celebrate the love and unity they had built. The new hope that enveloped Michael, Catherine, and Sarah's lives was palpable. They felt complete and fulfilled, knowing they had overcome many obstacles to reach this point. On a quiet night, while watching the stars in their backyard, Michael held Catherine's hand and whispered, "We're so lucky, aren't we?" Catherine, resting her head on his shoulder, smiled and replied, "Yes, we are, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for us." With Sarah asleep beside them, they felt a deep peace and a certainty that, no matter what came their way, they would always face it together with love and unity.